Hello and welcome to Monocle on Culture. I'm Robert Bounds. Today we're returning with the second chapter of our three-part series in collaboration with General Motors. In this episode, we're back on the road, picking up where we left you last time in the enchanting medieval village of Èze. We'll continue making our way to the movie mecca that is the city of Cannes, but along the way there's also time to explore the design world of the Cadillac Lyriq. We'll hear from General Motors designer Magalie Debellis and another cast of experts for their take on some of the history as well as the glimmering promise of the future of car design and why it's a specialism like no other. First, let's see where we got to on our tour of the Côte d'Azur. Then, as promised, we'll bring in Magalie Debellis, the GM designer steering the look and feel of the Lyriq, and we'll hear from design guru and car enthusiast Stephen Bayley, plus historian and colour expert Kassia St Clair. Narrow cobbled streets wiggle their way up and down Èze. The little hilltop village has an impressive history stretching back to around 2000 BC. Now it's known for being one of the must-shoot stops on the south of France scenic tour, with a smart hotel, a classic seafood restaurant, and, if you were allowed to drive your car to its craggy summit, a daredevil hill climb. But no, it's on foot we go, and the steep trek up to the top of the village rewards you with sweeping views of the turquoise Mediterranean. But it's also just as likely to offer you an appetite. A couple of key other things about Èze are probably having lunch at Château Èzard, which is the five-star hotel and restaurant in the town. And it has a classic menu called the Embrun de Méditerranée, where you can have le poulpe rôti ou satay octopus, langoustine royale, Saint-Jacques d'oreille, sélection de fromage foncé, inevitably, and also le riz de mer, which sounds absolutely delicious. Let's leave me there for a while considering the plat du jour. In the meantime, we should jump back in the car where you'll find yourself admiring the Lyriq's design, both interior and exterior. What a fine place to be. The Lyriq has looks locked down, with a sporty stern that speeds out of S's and a front end that combines boldness and elegance. And of course, that's the result of some inspired and meticulous design led by Magalie Debellis. You might remember Magalie from our introductory show on the Lyriq recorded in Zurich. Magalie was born in Paris, where she also studied and received her master's in transportation design. There, the first couple of years involved deep study of fine arts, including painting, life drawing, sculpture, and graphic design. Let's hear more now from Magalie about how she chose her path, or perhaps how the open road chose her.
As a kid, car designer was always on my dream list, really. I think I was always really attracted by car when I was a kid. When I was really, really young, kind of learned the colors from cars, like Ferrari is red, green is Aston Martin, and things like that. But I think as I kind of matured a little bit, what really attracted me is how you can make like a complex object look really beautiful. So it's also very much the aesthetic aspect that really drew me in. And because a car is very much an emotional object, it's a sculpture in motion, so it's very much the emotion that you get out of it at first glance. And frankly, the sense of freedom that you get out of the cars.
Beautifully put there, Magalie. Clearly, this incredible designer also has a good way with words. That idea of cars as emotional objects is one that stuck with me. I certainly felt it in the driving seat of the Lyriq as I was winding up and down the sunny climbs of the French Riviera. And as we drove through these historical hills and down into these stunning villages, I wondered if there was a route that suited a vehicle. Is there a typical steed for the Great American Road Trip, say? What about the Pan-European Dash or the Alpine Rally? I thought this generously proportioned EV can really do it all. Those twists inspire. Those turns are eaten whole. It feels small, nimble, eager. It was a thrilling drive, and it made me think of Magalie's work and those of the engineers whose work you can't see. There are emotional aspects built right into this car. It rewards pushing the EV pedal, that which some call gas, when the coast is clear, of course. Does it sound like I'm smiling while I say this? Well, it's because I am. All right, let's examine that idea a little further with someone who's spent more time than most considering why the car can elicit such strong responses. Stephen Bayley is many things. Author, critic, consultant, curator amongst them. He's known as the design guru and is responsible for the creation of London's Design Museum, the world's leading museum devoted to that contemporary practice. And importantly for us, he's also a total motorhead. Let's hear what it is about four innocent wheels which makes them so exceptionally potent.
There's no other product made in which there's more financial, emotional, cultural, social effort invested. I mean, they really are. I mean, it's about image and meaning. You know, people often ask what a brand is, and a brand is it's a mixture, I think, of the associations and expectations which any product has, and these are especially powerful, you know, with motor cars. I mean, I've never ever believed it when people say, "Oh, I'm not interested in cars. I just drive an old Volvo," and of course, what they actually mean is, I'm actually really very concerned that you should know that I find meaning and value in saying I've got an old Volvo. And this, for me, is part of the magic, the general magic of the contemporary world, that everything's got meaning and there's no neutrality to be had. You said you can't say I've just got a boring Hyundai. You know, it means you actually went out your way and chose a boring Hyundai. And of course, the manufacturers know this, and that's what the whole great aesthetic adventure of car design has been. I say has because it's in the past. I mean, I think it was very much a 20th century activity. And I think like the movies and rock music, car design was one of the defining cultural forms of the recently past century.
And Cadillac has played a defining role there. Let's hear a bit more then from Stephen.
Cadillac's got an extraordinarily significant place in the history of car design. I mean, car design, as we understand it today, was the creation of a fabulous vulgarian called Harley Earl, who set up General Motors' Art and Colour division in 1927. That's what styling was called. Art and Colour. It was called that in contradistinction to Henry Ford, who all of whose cars were black. And the reason, incidentally, why they were black, it was nothing to do with aesthetic counselling. It was just that Henry Ford was very cost-conscious. And in those days, newly manufactured cars were put out into the sun to dry, and black paint dried more quickly, and so it saved Ford some money. So all Fords were black, and they were democratic, but General Motors thought they'd get an advantage by using colour. And Harley Earl was the person who incidentally had been the neighbour of Cecil B. DeMille in Hollywood. You know, Cecil B. DeMille, one of the great early movie producers, and so sort of mythology was in his was in his personal culture. Cadillac was virtually the first product in which he started doing his magic. Cadillac was where the first experiments in car styling really took place. The world which allowed that to be created was a pretty interesting world, I think.
That interesting world has the absolute potential to expand in leaps and bounds of possibility and imagination within the realms of EV design. Sure, we've loved a front grille, that essential element that helped air-cool a car's engine and that became an emblem of a marque. But what else could that space be if an electric motor no longer needs a chill factor? The central drive shaft may be history, so what of that middle hump that we like to rest our elbows on? Could this offer up a fresh possibility for cabin redesign as adaptable interior space? The revolution isn't just in emissions, acceleration or the sound world of vehicles. There is a design revolution waiting in the wings that the Lyriq and Magalie's work is leaning keenly into. So, it is an interesting world indeed. Now let's put the pedal to the metal, though, the EV pedal that is, and find out how Cadillac has taken that rich history and created something fresh and fighting fit for today and tomorrow's world. When you're working at the intersection of mechanics and technology, with a healthy dose of luxury design thrown in, where do you start? I asked Magalie which tools she has at her disposal and, as we heard from Jay Kapadia, Cadillac's sound designer, what her desk looks like.
This is a bit of a mix, actually, on my desk. Well, I think mainly you're going to see there is always like few sketches. I still have, pencils and markers. I do have also the digital side, right? I've got some tablet to kind of draw. I've got like lifestyle magazine for inspirations. I also have a VR headset, which is a great tool where when we want to kind of go more digitally and kind of follow up through the creative process where we are at, this is a great tool to kind of use as a team. I do have also like some die-cast model from previous projects, such as the Cadillac GTP, the LMDH, and the Lyriq and the Celestic. But in terms of, as an extension, if you will, of my desk, we have what we call like a white wall that is kind of where we put all of our inspiration. So this is basically a big live mood board with lots of images that we just print as a team, and that's basically setting up the tone for our project. So this is very visual.
Magalie's mood board seems to be a happy nexus of inspirations that are about paper, ink and print, and the bold new world of digital design and collaboration. Just as much building blocks for a contemporary car as steel and rubber. Maybe this is the perfect illustration of how the Lyriq's design and designer are beaming themselves into the future. Now, let's see how far we've got on our journey to Cannes. I think it's about time for another break, and it's the chance to check out a Riviera institution. I do hope you've packed your swimming costume. We're standing on the breezy beachside, looking up. We're at the Club Dauphin, which belongs to the Grand Hôtel du Cap Ferrat. We're looking up through the pine trees at the old hotel, which started life by being bought by King Leopold II of Belgium in the early 20th century as a private villa. We look at it now with its balconies, its cast iron balconies and its pillars and palisades and its manicured lawns and trees, and wonder how it might possibly be a private residence. This hotel has had a wonderful history. It's now part of the Four Seasons group, but it's been a private villa. It's been owned by and run for the benefit of artists as well throughout the 20th century. It didn't escape the Second World War, of course. It was boarded up after Mussolini's Italian troops kind of stormed this area of the south of France. But it's most famous perhaps for its seawater swimming pool, which is an amazing place with a legendary swimming instructor. We might walk down the steps and hear a plunge or two into those famous saline waters. Right, enough of my potted history. There are other podcasts for that, I'm pretty sure. Let's bring in someone who really knows her stuff. Kassia St Clair is one of Britain's best-selling historians. Her most recent book, The Race to the Future, details an extraordinary motor race from Peking to Paris in 1907. The book, through the telling of tales tall and taller about this fledgling example of motorsport, also tells the history of the foundation of car design, attitudes to these mostly four-wheeled wonders, and how the ultimate road test was heralded by hungry news media as the coming of a new age of automotive freedom and all the manifold problems that could bring. It's a fascinating year zero look at how the world we live in was shaped by pioneering, slightly mad men and women in their racing machines. One particularly enlightening thread in Kassia's book details the history of EVs and how this intersects with gender. We might think of the electric vehicle as a futuristic object, but that is not quite the case.
There are lots of sort of early prototypes, but the first real cars come around in the late 1880s. And by around 1900, there's still a lot of debate about what is going to be the fuel for this technology, if indeed this technology is even going to last. And there are quite serious doubts about whether cars are going to be any good at all and whether they'll keep going as a technology or not. But, this debate about fuel is still really lively around this time. So you do get this idea that electricity is the fuel of the future. When people imagine what the future will look like around 1900, electricity is really fundamental to that. And so the idea that the car won't be electric is sort of a bit shocking to people, because that's what they imagine when they see the future. They see it as being electric. Then as now, most journeys that people were taking in cars were short and in cities, just a few miles. And the technology of the time could cope with that. But you get this problem that because electric cars mean that you have to sort of stay within a sort of prescribed radius of a charging point, they become really associated, or they're sort of marketed towards women, because that idea of women being aligned with the home and electric cars only being able to sort of go a certain distance from home really becomes kind of a very closely aligned trope.
Kassia talks of an extraordinary relationship between gender and electric vehicles, and one that's rarely acknowledged today.
So something that I found really surprising looking at, car adverts from around this time and a lot of the kind of the writing about cars from around, 1900 into the 1920s, is that cars that were marketed at women, predominantly electric cars, the emphasis was on how clean they were, how quiet they were, and how easy to use they were. So you often get, copy along the lines of, so easy, even a woman or a child could use it. While the writing about gas-powered cars really emphasised the fact that they were difficult to use, that they were explosive, that they were dirty, that they made a lot of noise, and that they could travel very far. And this was really exciting to people and really associated with this kind of like venturesome, martial, powerful image, which actually appealed to both men and women in the end. But, the idea was that this was going to be the man's car, while the electric car would be the women's car. You get this real sense that part of the appeal of the gas-powered car, the petrol-powered car, was that it was difficult to use, more difficult than electric, and that you needed sort of a certain specialised set of skills in order to use it. And so you do have this very gendered approach. Again, it doesn't quite work in the way that it is intended, because women start really actually wanting to get into that world of exploration and to be able to travel themselves. And so women really want to be part of that and don't sort of give men the field.
Well, thankfully, we're no longer in that world, and the EVs of today enable everyone to adventure in their own way. Indeed, as I have loved doing down the Côte d'Azur. And indeed, the Lyriq isn't beautifully designed in spite of its electric reality, but because of it. Here's Magalie on why that is the case.
It's an holistic approach, I would say, with the EVs. It's really like a good shake-up, I would say, in the thinking. And overall, it's allowing a greater creativity and innovation. And why is that? It's very much due to a skateboard platform. That's how the EVs are kind of architectured. So it allows like great proportion, flexibility in the architecture. Due to the flat floor, you have a really roomy interior that is very open. You can really look for some new bespoke solution of storages. And then because you can get really bold silhouette with great proportions, then you can emphasize on the design aspect and how seamless it is and pure, and really work and lean into the sophistication of forms. I think that the EV platform is really allowing to have better integration of the advanced technology, but in an artful way. And we can very much blend things differently, such as on the Lyriq with the front face, where you don't have to kind of hold the previous convention. So this is very, very interesting.
I'd like to go back to one particular element of that design. Remember how Magalie started her illustrious career as a kid strapped in the back seat, pointing out the various colours of the cars that she could see? Well, historian Kassia has a rather unique specialism. She's an expert in the history of colour. But you already knew that because you probably own a copy of her best-selling 2018 book, The Secret Lives of Colour. I couldn't pass up the chance to ask her about the relationship between colour and cars.
Colour is really complicated, and I sort of often think about it a little bit like shifting tectonic plates. Depending on where you're born and the time in which you're born, colour will mean different things to different people, and there'll even be, personal associations. And so if you're looking at the early 20th century, the colours were really associated with glamour and wealth and power and the kind of attributes that marketeers might want to harness in order to sell cars. Those luxurious colours are going to be slightly different from the ones that we think of now. Brown, which was a really fashionable colour at the time. But you also have kind of these richer, darker shades. And part of that really is a lingering from a time when different colours cost different amounts. By simply owning an item of clothing or an artwork in a particular colour, you were signalling wealth because of the value of that particular pigment or shade. But also you have this explosion during the late 19th into the early 20th century of kind of development of new pigments and colourants that can then be used in different applications. And so people are still kind of getting to grips with the idea of all colours being equal and infinite colour choice. And so that's really exciting to people. Not only are you buying a car, this great ultimate consumer good, it's then available in different colours and you can express yourself and your personality. You can have choice. You can match your car to your home or your beautiful new item of clothing, and you can match your car to that. That's really exciting. And so if you're thinking about marketing and the use of colour, it's the perfect landscape in which to create excitement and desirability.
Excitement and desirability. Sounds like a great way to sum up Cadillac, and I guess how you might capture the job that car designers are charged with. Stephen Bayley again.
The car designer, they cast their spells over us because they understand form, sculpture, they understand how light falls on bodies, they understand the meaning of colour and of detail, of contour, shape, and a car represents, collective yearnings.
Yes, as discussed, the Lyriq did turn heads as we cruised through France, and there's one more brief stop on this leg of the road trip. Let's take a quick pause down by the water for a breath of that warm sea breeze. We're in Villefranche-sur-Mer at the Port Royal de la Darse. You can hear some of the creaking buoys and ropes attached to small sailing ships. This is the beautiful kind of more homespun side of a still very luxurious and beautiful part of the south of France. But we're not far from the huge gin palaces of Monaco. This is a little bit more like the real deal. I feel like we could bribe a captain to take us fishing at any point in time. But the road might take us onwards. And onward we roll. Next time we'll reach our final destination of Cannes, delve into its cinematic history, ponder how cars have made movie history, and how EVs are making their quiet but powerful entrance onto our contemporary screens. Monocle on Culture is produced by Sophie Monaghan-Coombs and Steph Chungu, and Steph also edits the show. We'll be back at the same time next week, but until then, from me, Robert Bounds, thanks for tuning in.